Let me tell you a quick story about a man named Jamal, a 67-year-old grandfather who thought frequent nighttime urination was just part of aging. He joked about it, until one night he woke up 7 times to pee. That morning, exhausted and scared, he finally went to a urologist, and what the doctor told him stunned him. The doctor said, "Jamal, you're doing one thing every single day, and it's silently making your prostate grow." Jamal blinked. "One thing? What thing?" The doctor leaned in and said, "If you don't stop this habit now, things will get worse, much worse. That one thing is what I'm revealing in today's video. And if you're over 60, it may be the reason your prostate keeps enlarging. Holding your urine for long periods may seem harmless, but for men over 60, it quietly becomes one of the most damaging habits for prostate health. When the bladder fills, it expands like a balloon, and as it stretches beyond its normal comfort zone, the pressure inside it begins to rise. That pressure has only one direction to go, downward. And sitting directly beneath the bladder is the prostate. Over time, this repeated stress irritates the prostate tissue, causing inflammation and gradual enlargement. While aging itself naturally increases the size of the prostate, the habit of delaying urination speeds up that process dramatically and makes symptoms appear earlier and more intensely. As men age, the bladder muscles become weaker and less flexible. This means the bladder not only fills faster, but also struggles to empty completely. When someone holds their urine often, the added pressure only worsens this weakness. The bladder must work harder to push urine out through a tube already surrounded by a sensitive prostate. This strain irritates both organs, creating a cycle in which the bladder pushes harder, the prostate swells more, and urination becomes increasingly difficult. Symptoms like frequent nighttime trips to the bathroom, a weak stream, or a constant feeling of pressure in the lower abdomen often begin with years of ignoring basic urges. Even worse, when urine stays inside the bladder longer than it should, the warm, stagnant environment becomes perfect for bacteria. Infections and inflammation that follow can further inflame the prostate, tightening the muscles around the urethra and making it even more challenging to pass urine. What started as a simple habit of holding it can end up causing long-term changes that affect comfort, sleep, confidence, and overall quality of life. A simple example brings this to life. Consider a 68-year-old man named Fareed, who loved watching long cricket matches without interruption. He would ignore the urge to go, telling himself he'd wait for the next commercial break. Over the years, his bladder adapted to being overstretched, and his prostate responded to the constant pressure by becoming enlarged and irritated. Soon, Fareed was waking up 5 to 6 times every night and struggling with a weak stream. When he finally saw a doctor, he was shocked to learn that something as small as regularly delaying urination had played a major role in his condition. Once he changed the habit and began emptying his bladder when he felt the urge, he noticed better flow and fewer nighttime interruptions. Fareed's story is a reminder that small behaviors can have powerful long-term effects on prostate health. Chronic bladder overfilling may sound like a small issue, but for men over 60, it becomes a major trigger for prostate inflammation. When the bladder remains full for too long, urine stagnates inside it, creating an environment where bacteria can multiply far more easily. Even if a full infection doesn't develop, the constant stretching and pressure irritate the bladder walls. That irritation doesn't stay isolated. Because the bladder and the prostate sit so close together, what affects one quickly impacts the other. The prostate responds to this irritation by swelling, becoming inflamed, and tightening around the urethra, which is the tiny tube responsible for letting urine exit the body. Once this happens, symptoms like a weak urine stream, urgency, burning, or waking up multiple times at night begin to appear and gradually worsen. The more the bladder is forced to hold beyond its comfortable capacity, the harder it becomes to empty it fully later. This leftover urine sits inside like a stagnant puddle, further increasing bacterial activity and inflammation. Over months and years, this constant cycle of overfilling and incomplete emptying sends repeated distress signals to the prostate. The prostate reacts like any inflamed tissue. It swells, becomes tender, and starts blocking urine flow even more. This means the bladder has to push harder, adding even more pressure onto the prostate. It becomes a vicious cycle where the bladder irritates the prostate, and the swollen prostate then makes the bladder work even harder. Over time, this ongoing inflammation can accelerate prostate enlargement far beyond what normal aging would cause. Many men don't realize that something as simple as ignoring the urge to urinate or drinking large amounts of fluid at once. contributes to this silent problem. The body isn't designed to store urine for long periods, especially in later years, when muscles weaken and internal tissues become more sensitive to pressure and irritation. Consider a simple example. A 72-year-old man named Kareem used to delay bathroom visits while working in his garden or running errands. He didn't think much of it. He believed it kept his day efficient. But over time, he began noticing burning sensations, difficulty starting his flow, and waking up 4 or 5 times a night. When he finally sought medical advice, the doctor explained that years of overfilling his bladder caused chronic irritation, which inflamed his prostate and worsened his symptoms. When Kareem began emptying his bladder regularly and staying hydrated throughout the day instead of all at once, his discomfort reduced significantly within a few weeks. His story shows how small daily choices can quietly shape prostate health, either for better or for worse. Holding your urine for years gradually weakens the bladder muscles, and for men over 60, this becomes one of the most damaging patterns for urinary and prostate health. The bladder is a muscular sac designed to fill and empty in a steady rhythm. When you regularly ignore the urge to urinate, the bladder stays stretched for longer than it should, and like any muscle under constant strain, it begins to lose flexibility and strength. Over time, this reduces its ability to contract with the same force it once had. A weakened bladder cannot empty completely, leaving behind residual urine that becomes the starting point for a cascade of problems. This leftover urine creates pressure inside the bladder, and that pressure transfers directly to the prostate sitting just below it. The prostate becomes irritated, inflamed, and more prone to enlargement. As the bladder weakens further, it becomes harder to push urine through the narrowing pathway caused by the growing prostate. Men begin to notice a weaker stream, hesitancy before the flow starts, and the frustrating feeling of not fully emptying even right after urinating. This incomplete emptying increases residual urine even more, which adds greater pressure and worsens inflammation. The cycle feeds itself. The bladder weakens because of holding urine, the prostate enlarges due to constant irritation, and the enlarged prostate in turn makes it even harder for the bladder to do its job. Many symptoms men blame on old age are actually the result of this long-term habit silently damaging the urinary system. This muscle weakening also affects nighttime urination. When the bladder can no longer empty fully, even small amounts of urine stimulate strong urges, forcing multiple trips to the bathroom. Sleep quality suffers, energy drops, and daily life becomes more difficult. The problem isn't sudden, it builds slowly over decades of ignoring your body's signals. A simple example makes this clear. A 70-year-old man named Yusuf used to delay bathroom trips during long car rides or social gatherings, telling himself it was no big deal. Over the years, he began noticing that even when he tried to empty his bladder, it never felt completely relieved. His stream weakened, and nighttime urination increased. After a medical checkup, the doctor explained that his bladder muscles had weakened from years of holding urine, and the resulting pressure contributed to his enlarged prostate. When Yusuf began emptying his bladder promptly and doing simple pelvic exercises, he gradually regained stronger flow and reduced nighttime disturbances. His experience shows how a small habit can silently affect the bladder and prostate, and how correcting it can bring meaningful improvement. Ignoring the urge to urinate might seem harmless in the moment, but over time it trains your body into patterns that work against your bladder and prostate health. The bladder is equipped with a network of nerves whose job is to sense filling and signal when it's time to empty. When you consistently respond to these signals, the system stays sharp and responsive. But when you habitually ignore the urge, the nerves gradually adjust by reducing the intensity and frequency of those signals. Your body essentially learns that you won't act on the urge, so it stops reminding you as often. This means you can end up holding urine much longer without even noticing. For men over 60, this is especially harmful because aging already weakens bladder muscles and reduces nerve sensitivity. Once those signals weaken, the bladder tends to stretch more than it should. A stretched bladder becomes less efficient at contracting, meaning it can't push out urine as strongly. As urine remains behind after each trip to the bathroom, pressure builds inside the lower urinary tract. That pressure travels straight to the prostate, which sits like a ring around the urethra. When the prostate experiences constant irritation from this internal stress, it becomes inflamed and enlarges. This swelling tightens the passageway for urine flow, making it harder to urinate and causing even more incomplete emptying. The body then gets caught in a cycle. Weaker signals lead to delayed urination. Delayed urination leads to bladder overfilling. Overfilling stresses the prostate, and a stressed prostate makes urination even more difficult. This pattern doesn't develop overnight. It builds slowly, often across years or decades. Many men don't realize how much they've trained their bodies into ignoring its natural rhythm until symptoms like urgency, hesitancy, weak flow, or nighttime waking become unavoidable. And because the body has become accustomed to sending weaker signals, those symptoms can worsen silently before anyone notices. A simple example helps show this clearly. A 73-year-old man named Imran spent most of his career as a bus driver. He would often ignore the urge to urinate because stopping wasn't always convenient. Over the years, he noticed that the urge to go came later and later, sometimes only when he was extremely full. Eventually, he struggled with a weak stream and felt like his bladder never emptied completely. When he finally visited a doctor, he learned that years of ignoring urges had retrained his bladder nerves to remain quiet, causing chronic overfilling and contributing to prostate irritation. Once Imran began responding promptly to urges and scheduled regular bathroom breaks, his symptoms slowly improved. His story shows how powerful and reversible these patterns can be when you start listening to your body again. Taking frequent and timely bathroom breaks may seem like a simple routine, but for men over 60, it is one of the most powerful habits for protecting long-term prostate and bladder health. As the body ages, the bladder's elasticity decreases, the muscles weaken, and the nerves responsible for signaling fullness become less sharp. This makes older men more vulnerable to holding urine unintentionally, which increases internal pressure on both the bladder and the prostate. By emptying the bladder every 2 to 3 hours, even when the urge is mild, you prevent the bladder from overstretching and reduce the pressure that can irritate or inflame the prostate. This simple act keeps both organs functioning in a healthier, more natural rhythm. Timely bathroom breaks also help ensure that the bladder empties more completely. When the bladder stays within its normal filling range, the muscles contract more efficiently, allowing urine to flow out with better force and reducing the amount of residual urine left behind. Less leftover urine means fewer opportunities for bacterial growth, which in turn reduces the chances of urinary tract infections, something that can directly cause or worsen prostate inflammation. Regular emptying also keeps the prostate from being subjected to unnecessary strain. When the bladder is not overstretched, the pressure on the prostate remains low, allowing it to stay calmer, less irritated, and less likely to enlarge further. Another important benefit of timely bathroom habits is improved nighttime comfort. Many men wake up multiple times during the night simply because the bladder becomes too full too quickly. By emptying the bladder consistently during the day, especially before long activities or before bedtime, you help reset the bladder's natural capacity, reducing nighttime interruptions and improving sleep quality. Good sleep is vital for hormonal balance, inflammation control, and overall prostate health. A simple example helps illustrate this. A 69-year-old man named Amir used to wait until the last minute to use the bathroom, often going 4 or 5 hours without urinating. Over time, he started experiencing a weaker stream and waking up several times each night. His doctor explained that his bladder was becoming overstretched and his prostate inflamed from constant pressure. Amir decided to make a small change. He set reminders to visit the bathroom every 2.5 hours. Within 2 weeks, his urine flow improved, he felt less pressure in his lower abdomen, and his nighttime trips dropped from 5 to 2. This small adjustment restored a healthier rhythm to his bladder and eased the burden on his prostate. Amir's experience shows how something as simple as timely bathroom breaks can make a powerful difference in preserving comfort, confidence, and long-term prostate health. If this message opened your eyes, hit that like button. Share this video with a father, brother, uncle, or friend who needs to hear it. And if you want more life-saving